Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Jimmy McGill, and you're watching the Recovery Clinic. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already done so, please hit that like button, subscribe, and follow this page. It could save the life of somebody that you're close to, and it offers a vast information, just a database of information and resources. This is where we connect people in recovery. COVID-19 shut down a lot of stuff. It didn't shut down the dope house, and it didn't shut down addiction. And so if you know somebody who needs help, you can follow this page. We go live every Wednesday. You can inbox us and we'll get you connected with treatment, resources, housing, whatever you need, regardless of your finances. And so today's show this month, the rest of this month, is going to be how the faith-based community can step up and fight against addiction and the battle of overdoses and try to reduce that. And so I'm super excited today. We've got a great guest. We've got my pastor from That.Church in Sherwood, Arkansas, Pastor Scott Harnest. He is definitely somebody special to my life personally, and I personally know what that church is doing in the fight against addiction. And so what better of a guest than somebody who pours into me, because I get depleted, and so it's an honor to have you here, Pastor Scott. What's up, man?
Hey, I love being here. This is great.
Yeah, so we're going to dive into some stuff. What's going on?
Man, you know, this is just this kind of stuff exciting, man. Stuff's going on. I'm honored to be on this show and to see all that God's doing in you and the things that you guys are carrying out. Well, how exciting that is, man. This is cool. Yeah. It's an honor, man. It really is.
So you got a podcast too, though.
I do.
And what days does that go live?
It goes live Tuesday mornings at 11 o'clock. And the Scott Harnest podcast, it's on both YouTube and Facebook, and we cover all kinds of topics like you. You know, we have a lot of interesting guests and folks that are fun. In fact, Jimmy interviewed Jimmy like a week ago, 2 weeks ago. It's still available. You can go and get it on demand on our YouTube channel. And I mean, it is a mixture of incredible, interesting things because we talk about your book, talk about your stories, but there's moments of such hilarity. I laughed so hard, I nearly passed out.
Yeah.
Isn't it the truth?
That's good.
I broke out in a sweat. I was laughing so hard.
You were crying at one
I
point.
was. It was. There was moments where I was like, "Where do you come up with that?" That was fantastic. It was great.
That's so awesome. And so, speaking of books, if you haven't got More Than Happy, you need to. And this is a great book.
Thank you. Thank you.
Like I study it. So you've got a horse named Whiskey. Just all kinds of stuff. But a couple of things, you know, I literally was reading through it again, trying to prepare for today. And so in this fight against addiction,
sure,
you know, that the churches can really step up. And so I was digging into your book. And you can get this book on Amazon, right?
That's right. Sure
Anywhere
can.
else?
No, just Amazon. They're the exclusive distributor.
Okay. So
or at the church. You could get it at the church.
Yeah, you can come to That Church on Sunday and you can get it there.
That's right.
We got a That Church coffee house. What you got?
That's right.
So I want to ask you something real quick.
Sure.
Right here on page 21 in the More Than Happy book.
Right.
You say, in other words, the proud, strong presence that I tried to keep in front of everyone, including God, was precisely the place that God could work the least.
Yeah. You know, for me, it's funny. I wrote that book and hung on to it for a couple of years before I let go of it.
Right.
And really what the book focuses on is it focuses on the journey that God had me on. I was a pastor. I'm supposed to have it all together. And, you know, I sat down with dozens and dozens of people. I speak messages to large crowds, and then I counsel with people, and I could give you the answers. But in reality, there were some things in my own life where I was struggling to really experience what God wanted me to experience. And so this process starts with me going to my doctor, and I sit down with him because I'm struggling with anxiety and depression and some other things. And I thought, you know, I don't want to be a phony. That's the one thing. I just hate the idea of I don't want to be a phony. So I prayed and I said, Lord, would you show me what I need to do? And this is the journey. And honestly, I hung on to it for a couple of years because there were parts of the book that I wasn't completely comfortable that Jimmy and everybody else might know. There were just parts of my life that but what I found is that when I became vulnerable and released the book, there were so many people that came to me and said, I know what you're talking about. I go through that. And God brought me to a place where I found answers to some of the hardest questions that I'd ask in my life. And so it's a really powerful journey, very raw. It's not a journey of a super holy guy that, is going deeper with God. It's really a journey of, that everybody can relate to that struggles.
Yeah.
And goes, even though I was in the middle of great people and a great ministry and great things going on, I didn't feel that sometimes.
Yeah, you were preaching, and yes, dude. You know why I highlighted that?
Why is that?
There's a cliche in the recovery community, and so if you're watching and you're a person in recovery, then you know this better than I do, right? Like they say, God will never give you more than you can handle.
Yeah.
And right there, you say that's not really true. Like
No.
it's in that moment that you can't, in your weakness, that His love and power is made perfect.
That's right. That's right.
And so,
yeah,
that spoke to me.
Yeah, and it's huge. And it's funny that, in the process, even with me personally as a pastor, the longer you're in ministry and people expect you to be a certain level of whatever, spirituality or whatever, you begin to buy into that.
Yeah.
And what happens is that pride enters, and so I start role-playing with God because I was role-playing with people.
Yeah.
I was letting them see what I wanted them to see. I was a walking Instagram filter. You know what I'm saying? You never get the real Instagram picture.
They're killing the game with those filters.
Don't you know? You ever
stop playing with folks?
You ever run into somebody and you're like,
do I know you?
Yeah.
You look familiar.
Right.
Oh, that.
Yeah. So, but the moment that I was willing to get raw with God is where the journey really began. And that's what I feel like that a lot of people need to know, is that God actually loved me in my messed up brokenness.
Yes.
And He doesn't love me more when I have it together or when I don't have it together. He loves me the same.
He wants that raw relationship.
He does. He does. The thing is if God were to embrace me in my mess while I was pretending to not be a mess, then forever I would feel like the only way He loved me is if I'm wearing my mask. And so He said, you take your mask off first, and I'm going to show you that I love you there. And then I'm not going to leave you there.
Man.
And that's the journey that a lot of us, I think are experiencing.
So that is so good for recovery, because the one thing people in active addiction and active recovery both have in common is we are messy.
That's right.
We are messy.
That's the truth.
Another one that I really want to hit on in this book, and so I know that church has a large recovery community within the church.
Absolutely.
And so the reason it was attractive to that group, right? So like people in recovery, they get clean and they hit this breaking point and they arrive, and it's like they either have 1,000 reasons on why God doesn't love them. There's no way God is real if He let me go through all this. I've been sexually molested. I've been kidnapped. I've been beat up. I've been in and out of prison. Like all this stuff. Why would a God who loves me allow that to happen? And so they have this misconception that God either isn't real or He doesn't want nothing to do with me.
Sure.
And so, and a lot of times, people in addiction will avoid the church because of a bad experience where they didn't have a Pastor Scott.
Sure.
They didn't have a Scott Harness who understands alcoholism from a personal perspective, right?
Sure.
They had somebody who misrepresented the character of God and made the church unattractive. So people in recovery tend to shun the church and run away from it. But right here, and this is one of my favorite parts, because I like to start fights, right? Like I'm a fighter. Like God didn't take the fight out of Ricky, He redirected it. And so religion is a set of practices that makes us look like we're in harmony and have a good relationship with God.
That's right.
It's play.
That's exactly right.
Okay, and you go on to say religion is usually a set time to be with God, only to leave Him and go back on with your lives as if we can live outside of His presence.
That's right.
And then right here, the kicker, the ace in the hole, religion is a set of practices that make us feel as if though we have a relationship to God. Religion, at its core, is play acting, pretending, theater.
That's right. That's right. Well, the reality is that there's more costumes and masks worn on Sunday than we ever wear on Halloween.
Yeah.
And so what we do is religion gives us a set of things we can do that makes us feel like we have a relationship. And that plasticky, phony stuff, one of the things that I find with people in addiction is that people in addiction sniff that out.
Facts,
they sniff it out. And so what happens is that when that authenticity is missing, people look at it and they go, you're pretending like you got it all together, but you don't actually have it all together. It's that moment, I think, where we all come together and go, hey, none of us have it together, and it was never supposed to be like that, but the one who does have it together loves us. That's what's crazy. I mean, that's what's crazy. And I'll say this too, when it comes to the issue of addiction and how the faith-based community, participates in that, some of the absolute best, servants that love God, serve in our church, carry out mission and ministry, almost all of them have an addiction history. And I say it like this. I tell people this all the time. Stephen Curtis Chapman had a song a number of years ago. He said that there's no one more grateful to sit at the table than the one who most remembers hunger's pain. That was a lyric in his song. Is that not good?
Yeah, that's
Dude,
fire.
That needs to be a tattoo.
That's
You know what I mean?
Bumper sticker.
I promise you.
So,
but that's what you find with people who find hope out of addiction, is that their gratitude and understanding of what they're getting to occupy and be means so much more to them. There are people who feel like they're not broken. I don't have anything wrong with me. I've got it all together. I think it's much more difficult to reach somebody who feels self-sufficient than it does someone who goes, hey, no, I'm a mess and I need help. That's a bigger deal.
I completely agree with you 100%. I've said it 1,000 times. People in recovery tend to have a deeper appreciation for life.
They do.
Because we fought our way out of hell to get to it.
Yes.
We earned it. And so
that's right.
Man, that's just good stuff, Pastor Scott.
So true.
So let me ask you this. Scott Harnest has a very practical approach. When I attended your church for the first time, I had recently re-entered society.
Sure.
I was early in my process of recovery. It's been about 6 years or so, give or take. And my wife brings me to your church. And so she had history there because it was Mercy's Cross. And so if you're watching and you don't know, Mercy's Cross was basically a full recovery church.
That's exactly right.
Right? It was just recovery people.
That's right.
And so then it transitions into That.Church.
Yep.
And one of the things I heard you say, and I am not going to lie, I've stole it, I've used it, I've said it time and time again, is I'm not so spiritual that I smash my finger and sing Jesus Loves Me.
That's right.
And then you started, I'm a 12-step guy, so I'm hearing you say, just because you got victory in Jesus doesn't mean you don't go to a meeting. And I'm like, oh my, I'm home. I'm home.
Right.
And so how does a pastor get to that perception? Because you're in the driver's seat of a mega church and you're shifting and reshaping a culture for all churches to kind of take a note at.
Yeah. I think the key thing that I tuned into when you read the Bible, one of the things that I see in the life of Jesus in particular is that every community that Jesus goes into, that he picks out the greatest problem that community's facing. Yeah. And those are the greatest stories. What are the stories that we love the most? We love the story where the blind man who once is blind but now he sees. Mm-hmm. We love the story of where the person who's on a mat and he can't walk, he's made to walk again. Those are the miracles that when we read the Bible, we celebrate those and go, wow, look at that. That's incredible. Just last night we were watching the show Chosen. If you hadn't seen it. Oh my gosh, y'all. Dude, it's incredible.
What's your favorite part about it?
That so far, when Jesus lets the little kids come to him and
he's woodworking.
Yes, so good. But I love the miracles though. Yeah. You see Mary and you see her story. And so, when I read the New Testament and I believe this is true. This is reality. This is Jesus working. This is what he did. And what Jesus would do is he would tackle the greatest obstacle in the community. When I look at our community and I ask this question, what are our greatest obstacles? I have a short list. And addiction is at the top of that list. So it only made sense that we would tackle that story. And you have to tackle addiction. The issue, and I think one of the reasons why we're seeing churches struggle to try to get involved with this is because addiction is a very immersive thing. Yeah. And so, but when you tackle addiction, you have to tackle it on two fronts. It's a spiritual issue and it's a physiological issue. Mm-hmm. And if you address one without the other, you give somebody a really strong single leg to hop around the rest of their life on. You're not giving them two legs to walk on. You have to deal with the physical and you have to deal with the spiritual. You have to deal with both. And so that's how we tackled it. And that's where our church started. And that's still where our heart is, That church is a diverse group of people made up of tons of different backgrounds. And that's why the church is so beautiful. It's that one place where people come regardless of race, creed, color, socioeconomic level or whatever. And we're all at that same place.
Yeah.
one Savior and loved and cared for. And so yeah, so we just saw that that's one of the greatest obstacles. Let's tackle it and let's watch God do something. And some of the greatest stories that we still share today are these stories where someone walks out of something really dark. They take somebody's hand and we set their feet on some solid place and they get their life back. And they get to, we've got ladies in the church that they now have their children back. They have their life back. They have a career. They're moving forward. Yeah. We have men in our church that their life is being put back together. Those are the kind of stuff we love. That's a great story.
Yeah, you know what my favorite thing, and I hear it all the time in Faith Gang, which is the recovery piece to that church.
Yes.
And so, people refer to our church as a hospital in Sherwood.
Yeah, that's right.
And dude, that look, I almost started crying right then. Like, that makes me emotional. Like, to hear people refer to our church as a hospital.
Absolutely.
Where everybody can come in. And
absolutely.
So, dude, that's great. So, you've got some personal history with alcoholism.
I do.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was raised, my dad was an alcoholic, and my grandpa, in fact, there's not a single man on my dad's side of the family other than myself and my brother that are not alcoholics and that did not die early, die young. In fact, we went back, my brother and I were looking at the history of our family. We don't have a single man on my dad's side of the family that lived much past the age of 60. Everybody died, and most of them died younger than that. Most of it was tragic, and it was almost alcohol, all of it. Mm-hmm. And so there was this generational cycle of alcohol in my family. And, I lived with a dad who, because of alcoholism, it changed who he was, And I say that, I tell people this all the time. It's really hard to explain unless you've been in that environment. Alcohol just causes people to do things they wouldn't characteristically do. Right. But even down to wanting to go and talk to your dad about something, hey, I'm trying to figure out how to date, or, what do I need to do with this? And his eyes are glazed over and he's...
No advice to give.
Yeah, I remember my dad, and I want to say this because I think it's important. Mine and my dad's relationship was reconciled and healed in such an incredible, miraculous way. I don't mean anything ill towards my dad. I love my dad. My dad's in heaven now. I believe that. I had a chance to baptize my dad. I watched my dad's life transform. So awesome. So it's not, I'm not dissing my dad, but I think the reality is that there were some things back there that were tough. I remember Dad being passed out. We're in a truck. My brother's in the middle. My brother's a few years older than me. He's in the middle. My dad's passed out. My brother's got the steering wheel, and he's driving. And then Dad would come in and out of consciousness, and I'm on the other side, horrified. And that happened a lot. That was not uncommon. No seat belts. I mean, we didn't even believe in seat belts. We didn't have hardly seat belts.
Times have changed.
Yeah. So, but I look at that and I think my dad was an incredible person, but alcoholism stole all that from him. How can I help a little boy get his dad back? Where he doesn't have to go through that. How can we do that? How can I help a man reestablish who he is? And how can we do that? How can we participate in that? And I think that's a big part of our desire to help people.
No, I so powerful what you just said, and because of your lived experience and the things that you went through with a dad who suffered from alcoholism.
Yeah.
And to see him, come full circle and find the solution, and you getting to play a part in his life change and then baptizing him, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's huge.
Yeah.
And so I experienced that with my dad too. The last 6 years of his life, it was very holistic. Like, it still toxic, but we had a great relationship.
That's good.
And my Aunt Juanita did the same thing. She came out there and, prayed with him, and she left and was convinced. And she was in a wheelchair. We had to roll her to the car. She couldn't walk, but she prayed over all of us.
I promise you, that woman was amazing.
And so when we put her in the car, she said, "Jimmy, it's okay. You'll see him again." And she patted me on my arm, and I was like,
so good.
So cool.
It is good.
That lived experience with your dad, I feel like God used that. He knew what he was doing because that shapes the perception of your entire church.
Sure.
Because you're in the driver's seat of that church, and that church is leadership-led. And so that means those are your decisions, and you influence that culture.
Sure.
And that culture and perception of that church is we want the broken people who suffer from addiction.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things too that over the years as a pastor that I've had to pay attention to is that I've always prayed, God, what is it you want us to do, and how do we use the resources you've given us to help people the most? And I always look at who God brings us. And that's always kind of an indication as to what God wants us to do. And Jimmy, you're one of those people that there are people that walk through your door and you're like, God's up to something great.
Yeah.
We need to get involved with that. And I'm at a place in my life where one of my greatest, what I love the most is helping people carry out what it is God's called them to do. And I get probably more excitement out of that than I do me doing something. I just love to see somebody do something great. And I see you doing that, and I look around, I look at Faith Gang, and there's so many stories coming out of Faith Gang right now. I mean, stories that are just phenomenal, stories where you go, how in the world are we getting to see so much good happening in people's lives and finding community, and people that wouldn't even step foot into a meeting that met in a church? They wouldn't do that. There's no way. And rightfully so.
Yeah.
We've shot ourselves in the foot as churches. There's just been times we've not done a good job of really representing the Lord. But seeing people come around and go, oh, so this is kind of real. This is legit. I'm looking for the phoniness in this, but I can't find anything phony, which is like, yes.
I immediately think of Big Zach.
Me too. That's exactly what I thought about.
Just sent you a picture. You guys can't see Brady, but Brady's over here. And so Brady's our student minister leader, right? And so he's the pastor over the youth. And he's training Big Zach. And Zach, 3 months ago, hated God, didn't believe in him, couldn't even talk to him about Jesus.
Yep.
And now he's serving.
Yeah. But he was hopping on one leg of recovery.
Yeah.
But he didn't have the spiritual side. And so you're going to go through your life with a limp if you don't embrace this reality that there's more to us than the physical.
Yeah.
There's more to us than the psychological. But on the spiritual side, and I have to do this with pastors sometimes, there's more to us than the spiritual. You have to look at the holistic approach to people. And that's the thing I love about us when we have these conversations, because there's times, Jimmy, I'll geek out about, chemicals in your brain and how drugs rewire the way you think and how they affect, how that, releases dopamine and these kind of things. And the reason why that's important is because that's
practical.
It is.
Why do I don't want to say this because it makes me sound like my pastor will beat yours up, and I'm not trying to have competitions, but it's like, why can't other preachers and pastors and church leaders see that at other places?
And I think maybe they don't, maybe some of it is that we haven't done a good enough job of being able to share with them, and maybe that's what we need to do next. And maybe, it's intimidating. God's put a lot of resources in our hands, and that I'm grateful for those resources, but maybe we've got to do a better job of helping, bring them into that, because it's intimidating. Yeah. When you talk about addiction is, for people who are outside of the scope of it, it's very scary, it's ominous, it's going to bring something they don't think is going to be good, and and there's all these fears, but the truth is that addiction is an issue that affects all of us. I don't run into anybody. If I'm in a crowd of, let's say I'm speaking to a room of 100 people, or let's say 200 people, how many of you know somebody, or you yourself, has had a struggle with addiction? There's not anybody that's not going to raise their hand.
Yeah.
It's there, and so, and we have an answer. We do recover.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is that we do. And that's the beauty of having people there that have experienced God's hand in their life, His favor, and have worked through a process that God gave us wisdom in to be able to find that freedom and recovery. And I think that's a huge part of it.
Man, that is so good, and it's so good. And I've also got to say, not just Scott, but Pastor Blake Polson,
absolutely,
and Dale Hull, Lane Mason. Those are 3 other pastors that are like-minded, just like you, and they're doing everything they can in their community to make a difference. And so, but in a time, these 3 churches aren't enough.
Yeah.
We're talking about an epidemic that is killing 250 people a day across America.
Yeah.
That's an airplane. That is a, what's the big jet?
747, 767.
That's it. If you put 300 people on that plane and you crash that plane in the ground, and you put 300 people on that plane tomorrow and you crash it in the ground, America's going to come together and they're going to shut that airline down, and we've seen it in the last year.
Yeah. I think we have to humanize. I think we have to put a face on addiction, though.
Yeah.
I think one of the things we have to do is that I think from, and it's in my book, I talk about it, it's called Roadkill on the Spiritual, Spiritual Superhighway. You know, one of the things that's happened to us, though, is we've become desensitized to human beings. And that's one of the reasons why we don't have good conversations with each other and we don't love each other anymore, is because we've narrowed humans down to issues and we're not seeing faces. I'm constantly praying with people, and especially pastors will come in and we'll talk about different things, but it's ministry leaders or whatever. And I always ask them this question: do you see their face? You know, before you jump into that argument, before you take on that ministry, do you see their face? Because if you don't see their face, your heart's not going to be where it needs to be. Yeah. You have to see their face. We have to see the face of the addict. We have to see the face of the orphan. We have to see the face of the widow. We have to see the face of the person across the street. We have to see their face. That is a mandate. You have to see their face. The Bible says that God loved us so much that He came for us. He saw our face. Yeah. He looked at us and He saw our humanity, and He knew that we mattered, and we did matter, and we mattered so much that it moved Him, moved heaven to earth to take our place.
So good.
That's
to save us.
No, that's right. And we have to have that same thing. You know, it's not about a number 300. It's about 300 people. And I know some people that are disconnected from recovery or the issue of addiction may look at that and just see, well, this is just a problem, and they dehumanize it. We can't. These are people.
Yeah, they're souls.
That's right. These are people. And listen, right circumstance, they can be saved.
That's exactly right.
Right circumstance, they can be saved. And so let's go after that. Let's don't accept that as being okay. Let's don't accept when someone's suffering in our neighborhood or our community. Let's don't accept that. Whether it's addiction or groceries or helping somebody out, you know, just because our community wants to grow cold doesn't mean we get a right to grow cold. We don't get a license to discount the value of humanity. We have to love people.
That's exactly right.
And this is the best way to live.
Yeah.
You want to find the joy that you can't discover anywhere else? Start loving people, and you're going to find crazy joy.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. You know, one of the things that we see with addiction, and I went through it recently last year. I brought a guest speaker in. Now, this wasn't a pastor.
Right.
Okay? There was no sanctification process here.
Right.
This was a broken person who had national celebrity status. He's been on MTV. I'll just say it was Brandon Novak from MTV, and he's the best-selling author. And he said a curse word on stage, and so he was attacked by some of the, I guess they were old school Southern Baptist brimstone and fire preachers. Like went after me, you know? And I was like, man, hey, dude, he's not a preacher. What do you mean? Like, Jesus didn't treat people like that.
Sure.
And if our goal is to be there, like, he ran with prostitutes and thugs and outlaws.
That's so funny.
Like, let's get real. He was in the red quarter. You know what I mean?
That's right.
He was not that was not his mindset. He didn't yell at anybody and tell them, you know, like I've had some preachers talk to me so bad because of people's approach to recovery and run them all the way out. And
sure.
So, where do you see the faith-based communities falling short in the fight against overdoses and addiction? And
I go back to this one thing. I think for those of us who are addressing, you know, addiction, I think one of the things that we may be missing out on is the understanding of the physiological side of it as well. Mm-hmm. But I also think sometimes I'm talking to folks and they don't understand the spiritual. This is a spiritual battle too, and it's a significant spiritual battle. And so we have to be ready and willing to deal with the assets that go, or the parts that go along with that. And so it's going to be important. But I'll say this. I think if you celebrate the stories that we get to celebrate, I think everybody would want to be a part of it. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a part of a mom getting her kids back?
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to be a part of celebrating? I had a young lady in our church, both kids in foster care. She started, now we're talking soccer mom now, mind you. We're talking soccer mom, okay?
Yeah. Okay,
minivan, driving. Her husband was a physician. She went in for back surgery. They prescribed to her Oxycontin. In a month, she's addicted, okay? And full-blown addicted. Throws away everything. Her kids are in foster care. Her husband is gimpied up. And so, you know, she comes to the church. She has nothing. She's homeless. You know, she's been doing whatever she needed to do to get her drug, and just a mess and hopeless. And she started the process. And we sat down with her. We looked at her face, first of all. This is a valuable woman. Yeah. God loves her. She made in the image of God. This woman matters. And we loved on her and walked her through a program, and she began to work some steps. And progressively, she walked out of a dark place. And that was a process. It was, so when we come to know the Lord and we start working on this, it's not a switch flips and we're on the high ground. And over a matter of a year and a half, she got her kids back. She had a career. Her and her husband, and actually, he was in active addiction as well. He went to an in-house, wound up getting out of that. Now, her and her husband didn't reconcile, but she got her kids back. She got a career, and watching this woman walk in confident freedom with this experience. And I can't tell you how many people she helped out. Yeah. I mean, we'd sit down with people and they'd start that, the excuse deal, and she'd go, that's not how it is. And so those kind of stories make it worthwhile, and they happen. We do recover.
Yes, we do. And so I love it. The stories are my favorite part.
Me too.
Like, because 2020 was horrible.
It was. 2021
is off to a slightly better start, but it's still ugly.
It is.
And so in a time when all you really see is just bad stuff, turn on the TV, it's bad stuff. The homeless camps seem to be amplifying in influx in numbers. Addiction's at an all-time high. The recidivism rate in the state of Arkansas is at a 56%.
Yeah, I can see that.
56% of the men who come home from prison are, that means that your dad is more likely to go back to prison than your softball game.
That's right.
And so in a time that's just gloomy, people need those hopeful stories.
Sure they do.
We need to see the rainbow after the storm.
Sure we do.
And so that brings me to my next question for you.
Sure.
Is it possible, from a pastor's perspective, to be surrounded by hope and not have any for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely it is. In fact, that's what my whole book was about. I was in a successful ministry, a great family, an amazing wife, still struggling to experience what I was peddling and giving to other people. So I'll give you a story real quick.
Yeah, I love stories.
This is a real,
give me one. Give me one.
So J. Vernon McGee shares this story. He said he was traveling across Florida, right? Okay. And he said there's all these groves of oranges wherever. He said, as far as I could see, oranges are everywhere. And he said he said he and his wife been traveling on vacation, through the night. He said it was about time for breakfast. He said, I couldn't wait to see the first little cafe. He said, I was going to stop. We're going to eat breakfast. And he said, the first thing I was going to ask for is their biggest cup of fresh squeezed orange. He said, orange juice. He said, you knew that it's going to be amazing. He said, so we stop at this little restaurant. As soon as it's time for them to open up, he said, we go in. He said, we get the table. He said, the windows are, you can see all the windows. You can see oranges as far as you can see. And he said, I want the biggest cup of fresh squeezed orange juice that you have. And he said, the lady looked at him with a frown on her face. She said, I'm sorry, we don't have orange juice today. He said, what? What are you talking about? She said, yeah, our orange juice squeezer. She said, it's broke. He said, here we were in the middle of all these oranges, and I couldn't get a deal of orange juice because the only way they could think to get to the juice was their juicer, and their juicer was broke. And that's how we are sometimes. We can be surrounded by this hope and joy and peace and satisfaction that God wants to give us.
Yeah.
But we don't know where the juicer is. We don't know how to get it out.
So good.
And that's part of our job. That's what I wanted to give in the book. That's part of our job in Faith Gang. It's part of our job at That.Church, is helping people guide them to their own juicer. Yeah. You don't have to wait for somebody else to do something for you to do something about the situation and the status of your life. You can take that first step. You can. You're able. And believe it or not, there's people that will partner with you. And that's one of the things we want to do, is partner with you and walk you through this story.
Yeah.
No,
I can testify to that.
That's right.
I can testify to that. For those of you who don't know, I normally don't talk about my personal stuff at all. But our church actually partnered with my wife's nonprofit.
Yeah.
And which is, we provide sober living to men and women across the state of Arkansas. And so that church was the first official and still is the primary partner / funder for Next Step. And Next Step is pretty well known at this point. And so that was always our goal, was to, if you mention Next Step, you automatically think that church.
That's awesome. Well, and the beauty of Next Step, and one of the reasons why we saw it as an opportunity to partner with you guys, is that we just kept seeing people's lives radically transformed and changed. And we were like, you know what? You cannot not want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that. Get me in there. What do we need to do? How can we do something? Because this story, it was one person after another after another. Yeah. And Chelsea, your wife, is absolutely phenomenal in her approach and confidence and the hard truths she'll give people.
It's a special ability.
And it's needed. It's needed, because there's times in our life we need somebody to go, hey, that's bull.
Yeah.
Sorry, you got to stop that because that's not real.
Dude, she blows my mind with the, like, I've never seen anybody be able to so politely, unoffendingly hurt your feelings.
She does. She does.
Like, it's a superpower. How do you do that? How do you tell somebody what you're saying is a crocodile?
It's respect. She has respect.
Yeah.
And she has reputation, and she has history.
Yeah.
And all of those things combined. So when she says something to you, you know, here's the other thing, she cares about you.
Yeah.
You know, you may not listen to somebody give you a critique of your life if you don't know that they actually care about you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I might file that in the old hater file. You know, it must be a hater over there.
No.
But if you know somebody genuinely cares about you and they've made the investment to help you,
Yeah.
then you listen to things they say. You know,
Yeah.
you'll listen to it because they've earned the right to be heard, you know, and she does that. So do you. And that's a huge part of Next Step. I mean, I see Next Step consistently changing lives in ways that you just go, that doesn't even seem possible.
Yeah, she's at a public hearing this morning.
Is she really?
To expand some. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
Good.
So, this book I have seen. I hate to jump. You know, I'm all over the place. I'm not structured. My freestyle ability is what makes it.
I love it.
You know,
I love it.
So I've seen more people in the Christ-centered community talk about this book than almost anything. Like for the last month, month and a half or so, I can't even turn on my social media without seeing a tag or a post about the More Than Happy book. And so obviously it has impacted, influenced, and changing people's lives. Like God used you and He's using this book. And so with that being said, what was your biggest challenge about writing the book? And I'm going to give you a double up.
Okay, do it.
And I also want to know what your favorite quote is, because one of the things I see a lot of is people quoting it.
Yeah, right.
Now mine's the religion, right. You know, because I believe Jesus loves God and hates religion.
Right,
And,
right.
And you confirm that. So what happened was we riding together. We in the car together.
That's exactly right. You know, my biggest obstacle, quite honestly, was the book was so personal to me that I couldn't let go of it. So I left it incomplete for years. And so I just wasn't sure that and this is terrible. Let's just tell you where I'm at, you know, and God's growing me, you know, see, I'm still learning, you know, but in my position, I was like, you know what? I'm not sure that I want to pull the veil completely back and let you see every part of me that I don't necessarily want you to see.
Here I am.
Yeah, here I am.
Take
it or leave it. Take it or leave it. And so
you can't get exposed that way.
Right. Well, that's right. I tell people, I said, you know what? Here's the one thing you can be pretty sure of. You don't have to worry about Susie Q telling you something about your pastor because I've probably already told you. I'm going to be the one to tell you. I'd rather me tell you. I'll control it that way. And then me, you know.
I get it.
So,
I love it.
So I held on to it. When I did release it, COVID hits. You know, what a great time to release a book, right? COVID hits, and
that's when I wrote mine. Was during COVID.
I know, and everybody's like, that's the absolute worst time. I was like, yeah, but here's what happened. I think it may have shrunk the audience, but I tell you what it did. In a time when people really need hope, I feel like the book, God birthed it when it was supposed to happen. Right. And I've seen, and I'm so honored that someone would even read it. I mean, just to be honest with you, I'm just honored that someone would read it. But I've had so many people. I mean, I keep them all. I have hundreds of letters of people who've experienced life change, and I just think that's such an incredible, incredible thing to have people read something that you wrote and your experiences, something you're really worried about, you know, putting out there, and they go, man, I'm glad you said, because I've had the same feel. And you know how it is. There's times when you speak somewhere and someone will come to you, and if they're embarrassed about it, they'll speak to you in like a whisper tone. Mm-hmm. You know, I remember speaking in different places, and like parents come to me and go, I have this son, and he's got this problem. Yeah. You know, they don't want everybody. That's where I was. I had some issues, and I didn't really want to say it out loud, but God wanted it. You know, and I've learned that if you have a pain, if you'll give it to God, He'll use it as a platform that you can speak from.
Guarantee
you know,
time.
And that's probably one of my favorite quotes, and that's in there as well, is that, you know, for all those of us who do struggle, one of the beauties of God's, you know, transformation and recovery and healing is you share it. And you go, hey, here's who I am. God accepted me and loves me. You know, He loved me when I was anxious, worried, nervous, broken. And He still loves me today. And He has given me some skills. I mean, honestly, this is a book of a journey. It wasn't one step and I'm there. It's a process. And this book covers a number of years that God showed me some things that I just feel like it's really helpful. I just really think it'd be helpful to anybody that's looking for more than, you know, happiness is what happens to me. And that's pretty cool as long as you got good stuff happening all the time. But God has something greater than happiness that He wants to offer us. And it's way better, you know.
And it lasts
a lot longer.
Long time.
That's exactly right.
So one more question before I hand you to the camera.
Okay, super.
Because like I feel, you know, when you have your mentor, I've got you right now. You don't belong to the church. You don't belong to Stacy or Faith or Hope or Brady. Like I feel like he's mine. And so, you know, when you got somebody who's you know, you've been mentoring me for a long time. You know, we meet once a week and you coach me, and probably my favorite time of the week.
Me too.
You know, and so I got to ask you, what could other churches and other pastors do to step up in the fight?
You know, I think one of the things that would be really good would be to reach out to you and say, hey, how could we and what could we do? I really think that'd be helpful. I also think looking at what some of the other churches are doing that are successfully pressing this thing forward. There's no sense in making mistakes that we've already made. You know, we've learned a few things, you know, and there's a few things that we know. There's certain things that we don't do, and there's certain ways that we do things. And if we could help somebody avoid some pitfalls, we want to do that. And I think that's one of the key things is look at where it's happening and happening well. You don't have to be original. That's the one. God didn't call me to be original. He called me to be effective. So I'll steal from anybody. You know, if they're effective, then we'll go look at that, and we'll just.
All good artists steal it sometimes.
Of course, you know. Yeah, if you take it from one person, it's plagiarism. But take it from a bunch of people, it's called research. So we just call it research. You know. So yeah, you go and get whatever works, because what we want to do is we want to affect life change in a community of people that are suffering and dying. And they are dying, you know, so, and we can do that. And there's churches that's doing it. There's people like you that absolutely they're the expert on it. And you got to get, and you know what? The help's free. Yeah. Come on, it's available. You want to walk through, you want to, hey, you want to that, we'll copy it for you. You can have that. Put your name on it. We don't care. Yeah. Doesn't matter, so. That's
good stuff. You know, I gotta tell you thank you, because for the last 6 years, I've built my identity in Jimmy, the recovering person. Like, my identity has been built into recovery.
Sure.
And you know, for the last year and a half or so, you've really been helping me reframe that identity to be built in Jesus.
That's good.
So, you know, because I'm no longer just happy with being Jimmy, the guy who talks about recovery. If I talk about recovery, I want to be able to talk about God just as easy, just as frequent, and just as randomly.
That's good.
You know, and so I don't know if I've ever told you that, but I thought, and when better to do it than live. So,
that's awesome.
Thank
you for that too, by the way. That means a lot to me. It means a lot. You really don't know. That means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, because you get to see me with all my flaws, and you get to help me polish them and make those defects assets.
So much fun. So much fun.
We like to give the last few minutes to our guests, and so it's yours. Anything you want to say, you've got it.
I love it. I love it. You know, I would say this, is that I feel like that regardless of where you are in your life, I think we all go through seasons, and I did it. You go through seasons where hope is in short supply. You go through times of your life where things are difficult. One of the things that is absolutely true is that God did not design us to go through life alone. We are to be in a community, and not a community that's pointing out each other's flaws, but in a community where you have the chance to have people encourage you and strengthen you and speak into you and care about you and know your face and know your name, and walk with you through, you know, whatever's there. If it's the difficulty of addiction, or if it's just the complication of fear and anxiety, whatever it is, you know, I know this. I know that God has blessed us here with lots of places that people can plug into and find that. But I think we need to find that, and I think we need to reach out for help. You know, for me, in the book, the very first chapter is I went to my doctor first. I mean, when I was struggling, when I was hurting, I just went to him. And to be honest with you, I went to him because I thought he had prescribed to me like an antidepressant. And my doctor didn't do that. He sat down with me for 45 minutes and walked through my story, and he said, I'm not going to give that to you. Chris Cobb's his name, by the way, Dr. Cobb. I'm just going to out him right there. And I got an appointment in a week or so, and I'll talk to him about it. But anyway, he sat down with me and said, hey, I'm not going to do that because I don't think that's what's going on. Let's talk about it. What doctor sits down with you for 45 minutes and just talks to you. But that's where it started. I had to ask for help. And that's where we, honestly, everybody's journey is going to start with the first movement. I've got to ask for help. I need some help. And you know what? I know you're available. I know that Faith Gang's available. I know that there's tons of other things and organizations out there, but you got to ask for help. You got to reach for help. And we'd love to be a part of that, but wherever you get that help, it doesn't matter. I think that that's the big thing, because right now COVID has made us very separated, and people feel very isolated. They feel alone. There's a whole bunch of hopelessness. I mean, I see it all over the place. And my thing is that, listen, that's not the truth. This is not the end of our story. There's something great going on, and you don't have to stay where you are. God can move you from there, and I'd love to be a part of that if we could.
Man, so good. So good. Thank you, Scott, for coming on the show and just for bringing God to the fight. You know what I mean? And so hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, if you're struggling, you don't have to be alone.
That's right.
Social distancing is not the same as social isolation.
That's good.
And so if you're trying to stay safe, just know that social media can help play a part in bringing you recovery support and services. You can message this page anytime during the week. You haven't seen Ashley yet, but we will put a face to the name eventually, and Ashley is behind the scenes answering your emails. If you message this, there will be a recovering person there to help you get into treatment. You don't have to do it alone, and you can't. And so just know that we're here. Next Wednesday, we've got another great guest who is a Christ-centered person, author of Recovery in the Hands of Jesus, Brittany Boyce, who went from addiction to a master-level social worker. And so it's going to be a great show. And we'll see you next Wednesday at 11.